And we're joined again by legal analyst Jonathan Berry. Let's talk about this homeless case, Grants Pass, Oregon versus Johnson, which will be argued next week at the Supreme Court. A lot of talk about the scope of the Eighth Amendment. What does the Eighth Amendment say, and is this an unprecedented way of looking at cruel and unusual punishment?
Well, so the Eighth Amendment forbids the deployment of cruel and unusual punishment. And I think we're going to see a lot of dispute over exactly what does that word mean now that the Supreme Court has really turned to focusing on the text of the Constitution.
And so what does that word mean, punishment?
What punishment really refers to, as best I know, is really the consequences, typically the criminal consequences that get visited on someone once a court has found them guilty of some crime or offense.
So then how does that apply to grabbing people who are homeless in encampments and arresting them, moving them into state facilities?
Yeah, so that's really going to be the central point of controversy here is are the actions that are being criticized, that are being criminalized, is this about conduct or is this about status? Is this about simply criminalizing homelessness or is it about criminalizing some very specific conduct?
Okay. Well, Florida and other states have proposed similar bans to address the growing problem of homelessness. What have the courts said in the past that states are allowed to do?
The states have, generally speaking, the states have pretty broad authority to deal with these issues. There are, special concern for the human dignity of the homeless persons at stake, and as well as sometimes the very serious public safety concerns that everyone who lives in that community should be concerned about as well.
I know that we've seen that with an uptick in violence in a lot of the U.S. cities that are worried about what is happening with this economy and more people being on the streets.
Absolutely.
And being desperate. Is that then something that the Supreme Court will address, or is it just going to address this very, very narrow reality?
I would expect the modern Supreme Court to stay pretty focused on the text of the Constitution. Really, the question in this case, Montse, is does this specific municipal law violate this specific prohibition in the Eighth Amendment?
Well, let's shift then to a conversation about another amendment. Jonathan, this Saturday marks the 25th anniversary of the mass shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado. 13 people were killed when 2 students opened fire. At the time, it was the deadliest school massacre in American history. And sadly, since that day in 1999, there have been other equally shocking mass shootings at more schools around the nation. The American Medical Association calls gun violence in America a public health crisis. We have 3 gun cases before the court, one on the legality of machine gun conversion devices, one on protections for domestic violence victims, and then the free speech rights of the gun industry. Broadly, how might the court this term shape Second Amendment rights?
It's going to be a pretty significant term for these issues, Montse. I think you're going to see careful attention being paid, especially in the case that implicates domestic violence issues of how much dangerousness needs to be found about a particular person before it's appropriate under the Second Amendment to strip away some or all of their gun ownership rights.
To limit that right in some way. It is something
Yes.
We're watching carefully. Well, then, how would you characterize seeing this big change, this court term, talking about abortion, transgender rights, homelessness? Now we're dealing with guns again, which has been really a thread over the last 8 to 10 years. How would you characterize the Roberts Court today? Is it what people expected?
I think the Roberts Court, in its current incarnation, they've been pretty careful. They're trying to take a step-by-step approach on cases as they take them, and then sometimes you see stuff that's really big, like Dobbs ending the Roe v. Wade regime. But even there, that was the fruit of a very long legal and intellectual campaign for which Dobbs was really just the final step.
And quickly, will that be the legacy of Chief Justice Roberts?
I think it'll be the legacy of the Roberts Court. I think it may be the legacy of Justice Alito in particular.
Well, you have a bias there. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, Jonathan. It's great to have you here.